Welcome to the group here, whatever it is. I don't even know what we are anymore. You know, are we the church? I don't know. But all I do know is that what I have been sharing with you, I hope that you find interesting. And evidently you do. We've reached that point in the Ten Commandments. We started off with I am, which we understand. We looked up the word am. The word am is present tense single. So God identifies itself as the single I, which is the pineal gland of the brain. And we went on through the various aspects of the cosmic implications. Honor your father and your mother, which we understand means raise your mind and your spirit. The Sabbath, keep holy the Sabbath, we understand is that point to the seventh chakra. And then we had thou shalt not kill, which we understand was talking about the soul and the spirit and killing the Christ out of a person by not instructing them or not having them understand about meditation, and et cetera, et cetera. And we reach this point here, which is a sensitive one. You shall not commit adultery. Okay. I'll tell you how the people in the ancient times got away with this. They had 700 wives. I'm not committing adultery. That's my wife. That's number 684. That's what they did. And so, because there was no rule that says, you know, you only can have one wife, it just said you should not commit adultery. So they went out and had 700. King Solomon, who never existed anyhow, he had 700 wives who also didn't exist because they had 700 and the number was 7, and we were going to do that at another time. But all this is mythology. Okay. The scripture is written here in a beautiful way to show you the relationship between, first of all, a macrocosm. Okay, and the macrocosm in the universe is Uranus, which is the controlling planet in this particular age we're in, and Gaia, which is Mother Earth. In other words, we have the mother, we have the father, and we have the marriage, the bridegroom, and the bride. Now, you bring that down, just like I showed you before, from a macrocosm down to a microcosm, and you come inside of your head, and you have the mind, father, and you have the spirit, mother. So there's a part inside of you that longs to understand truth, and that part should be allowed to intercourse with the divine mind. Unfortunately, most of us, all of our lives, have intercoursed downstairs with what the Bible calls the strange woman. And with that, we set up for ourselves some extremely strange types of things that we believe in. And our belief is centered around somebody by the name of God, incapable of forgiving you unless this person, God, resorts to violence. Doesn't know how to figure out how to do this, so decides to get a little girl pregnant, comes down, has her give birth to him so he can kill himself. And he has a bunch of guys kill him who don't know what they're doing, and then he sets up everybody to know that he's going to resurrect on the third day, and nobody shows up for that, and so he flies back to heaven, and this is God. This is it. And so our whole basis then of life is based around this thing. I was reading something. I was in a doctor's office the other day, and I'll say very little about that, because that was a trip, but I won't say anything about that. But there was an article in there, Newsweek magazine, very interesting, and it was about depression and you know, depression of the mind. And you know, they come up with the idea, it's genetic. Genetic. And one of the psychiatrists who was talking about this said it all starts a long time ago when a group of people decided to kill the smartest person in their group and eat him. And that started a thing called religion. And everything has gone downhill from there. And basically that's what, and it's exactly what this is. It's a human sacrifice. So we've constructed that because our intercourse of our human spirit is with that which is coming from the outside, that which is coming with the physical. Okay. Now, when we talk about, in the vernacular of how we're studying this in the Greek myth of Jesus, and please don't be offended when I say the Greek myth of Jesus. The Greek myth of Jesus means Jesus is real. So, understanding what Jesus is. But in this, Jesus takes the part of the bridegroom, also as the sun in the sky, which is as a bridegroom. We're going to know that. Now, Jesus is the bridegroom. That part inside of you, which is the feminine principle of spirit, which is in the mind in the right hemisphere, is supposed to not intercourse with the flesh below, but is supposed to intercourse with the bridegroom, who's Jesus. Now, there's a very interesting statement made on page 783 of the Bible, and Jesus makes a statement in Matthew chapter 7. Why don't you turn there? Matthew chapter 7 on page 783. And Jesus makes a statement which is revealing as to what is being discussed here. He has a bunch of people come to him and say, Lord, 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 Lord. In the same way that, let me tell you something, folks. And I know many of you are exposed to television and Christian television, etc., etc. And many of the people there are trying very desperately, very hard to do the right thing. I'm disagreeing with the philosophy. I'm not knocking people. I'm disagreeing terribly with the philosophy because it is so patently, whatever the word is, wrong. That's hurt a lot of people. The philosophy is, if you confess Jesus as Lord and believe that God raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. And so what they do is they say, put your hand on the television, repeat these words after me, and you'll be saved. No, you won't. Because they don't go to the next point, to the next level of understanding that, by saying in Luke 6:46, Jesus says, why do you call me Lord and not do what I tell you to do? So there's a condition to this. But they don't explain the condition. They say, oh, if you say these words, you're going to be saved. But Jesus says, no, no, no. You've got to do what I tell you to do. And what does he tell you to do? The first thing is seek the kingdom. Second thing, practice the single eye, locate the kingdom within yourself. So then we understand where your salvation comes from. Your salvation comes from overcoming yourself, raising yourself above the thoughts of the mind. It's a very personal thing. In other words, in order for you to have salvation on this Jesus level, you just can't open your mouth. You have to get very personal. You have to enter within yourself and have an event take place in your mind, which is described as your spirit intercoursing with Jesus, the bridegroom. In other words, the right hemisphere of your brain activates, and the God part and the part of you that's in that right hemisphere comes together. This is the way it's put. In page 783 in Matthew chapter 7, verse 23, they ask, well, verse 22, it said, Lord, Lord, blah, blah, blah. And he says, then I'll say unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me. See that word knew? The word knew there, the word, the Greek word, in Hebrew word, is yada. And yada means sexual intercourse. Doesn't mean I never had an acquaintance with you. It means I never became intimate with you. There's no way. You and I aren't married. See? Now, you'll see, I'll show you where that shows up again. If you look in page 777, you're on 783, go back to page 777 and look at Matthew chapter 1. And you'll see that same word. You won't see it, but I mean, this is where the word. If you look in Matthew chapter 1, it's talking about Mary, the virgin. Okay, and in Matthew chapter verse 24 talks about Joseph and Mary, and in verse 25 he said, and he knew her not till she had brought forth her first son. That same word yada is used there, meaning he had not had sexual intercourse with her. That's going along with the virgin birth concept. That was the same thing in the Krishna deal. They were a little more specific, and they said no seminal discharge had taken place between Sepulveda and, what's her name? Oh, Devaki. Thank you. Very good. Sepulveda and Devaki. No seminal discharge had taken place. Well, in this particular case, it said there was no sexual intercourse. So here now, the question is, to know Jesus does not mean... See, a lot of times you see on a bumper sticker, do you know Jesus? And I say, well, yeah, I read about him. I went to church. I was taught about him. That's not going to do it. Because then he's going to say, no, I never knew you. Why? Because you never intercoursed with me. The kundalini is the orgasm of the intercourse between the spirit and the divine Christ consciousness. And the kundalini, that surge of energy you feel that rises up from the spine, is the orgasm. The seed is placed. Everything follows natural line. You know, it's so silly. Where would you in the church say talking about this? This is an orgasm. You have an orgasm with Jesus. I mean, you know, people would freak out. But unfortunately, that's the truth. That's the way this whole thing is based. It's based on reality. What really happens? And this is a real intercourse, and it creates a change. Why? Because in this virgin consciousness, which is the right side, when the spirit and the bridegroom come together, the orgasm of kundalini takes place. The seed is placed, and what happens? Born of a virgin is the child within. And the child, and the government shall be upon his child. We're going to be singing about this child for the next 2 months. Wonderful Counselor. It's the child within who is born of the intercourse between the Spirit and the Christ, that which is within you. So here then, who are you and who am I? We become the bride. The bride of Christ. And you've heard that many times. The bride, it's the wedding day. It's the time for the intercourse to take place with the bride of Christ. The bride. Look at page 619, the book of Isaiah. And we'll look at Isaiah chapter 62. And in Isaiah chapter 62, you'll see in verse 5, for as a young man marries a virgin, so shall your sons marry you, and as the bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall God rejoice over you. It's the same. Now, who in Scripture is the bridegroom? The sun in the sky. The sun in the sky is the bridegroom. And Uranus also takes on that position and is actually called the son of heaven. And Uranus was married to Gaia. That's the macrocosm. The same thing that you have to do in your head, Uranus and Gaia were doing. So the bridegroom intercoursed with the bride, and Mother Earth then produced. Mother Earth gives birth. All of these things are born out of Mother Earth because of her intercourse with the bridegroom. But one of the children they had was a rascal named Saturn, whom you know in the Bible is Satan. And Saturn took a sickle and castrated Uranus. In fact, Albert will tell you scientifically there's a chunk out of Uranus. That's how part of the myth was created. But the person with the sickle, Saturn has another name, and you'll see him on New Year's Eve. His name is Kronos, which is time. It's Father Time. And who is it that destroys us? Time. It's either the past or the future. We never sit in the center, in the present. So it's all part of the myth. So when Kronos castrated Uranus, Uranus had to go away. So now the bride is all by herself. Say, no more husband, no more bride. So the seeds of the father cannot come back into the bride. And what does it mean? The bride is barren. And look at the earth, with the wars and the bombs and all this stuff. Well, now Pegasus and all these things, the light beings are returning. And who is coming back to claim his bride Gaia? Uranus. Families being rejoined. It's all happening in the sky. And here we are on this planet in the middle of this, and 3/4 of this planet hasn't the slightest idea of it. It's like living in a house and not knowing what's going on upstairs. What's all that noise up there? I don't know. I never go up there. I'm not allowed to go up there. Why don't you go up there and find out what's going on? Well, my church says I can't go up those stairs. I can't look up there. That's what it's like. It's like something. Do you ever see these movies where they have a room? Nobody's allowed to go in this room. Don't ever go in that room. What's the first thing you want to do? You want to go in that room. Don't open that. You ever go to movies? Don't touch the door. And then at the end of it, they go down the hall, and there's the door. And the music is screaming. And you hide behind it. I don't want to see what's going to open the door. That's what's going on. We've been taught by the church, don't open the door. And all this wonder is happening, and nobody knows. And nobody has a clue. But you do. And so, that makes you responsible to get involved with this. So we intercourse with God in our meditation. There is no other way you can intercourse with God. Unless you come up with a way, you have to let me know. But there is no other way to intercourse with God other than in your meditation. All right? So, what is then adultery? You shall not commit adultery. And as I told you, the people in the old days didn't commit adultery because everybody was their wife. They used to grab people walking down the street. Come in, wife. That was it. Everybody was a wife. So, but you cannot commit adultery. And we're not talking about things in a social realm. We're talking about things in a spiritual realm. Now, the human mind is an extremely wonderful thing to have. And we're not talking about this. You have to use your carnal mind, when you're working, you're raising the kids, you're cooking, you're sewing, you're going to Atlantic City, whatever you do, you use your carnal mind. It's fun. You go to the movies, you use your carnal mind. It's a very precious treasure, and it's supposed to be used to act out what you do in a daily way. But your divine mind is a whole different story. That's the part that communes with God. We've got this, excuse the expression, ass backwards. We've been communicating with God with the carnal mind when we're supposed to be communicating with each other with the carnal mind. We communicate with God only with the divine mind. That's where we intercourse with the Christ, say. So what are we doing? When we're using our mind to do our work, fine, it's wonderful. Whatever we do, we have fun, we talk to one another, we use our carnal mind, it's wonderful. When we commune with God, if we're doing it with this, and you see it in churches all the time, it's emotions, it's called emotions, we're committing adultery. This has nothing to do with it. I saw this thing about in the Asbury Park Press about the mega churches all over, and they're having bands and they're having all this stuff. Well, they're having entertainment. And they said people are being drawn and they're coming all over the place. That's not good. Because you don't hear them in the exciting. You hear them in the still small voice. Because these people go to these exciting churches, they have to go home by themselves. And when they open the door, they're still carrying the same problem in here that they had here. They might have had some fun for a couple hours. But that's not what this is about. So when you are turning here for spirit, you're committing adultery. And the commandment says, you shall not. Look, I'll show you how when you look for God through your mind, through religion, with all due respect, this is how it is described in the book. Go to page 545, Proverbs chapter 6. 545, Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 24. To keep you from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman. Lust not after her beauty in your heart. To keep you from the flattery of the tongue of the strange woman. Lust not after her beauty in your heart, and that's in your mind. Neither let her take you with her eyelids. In other words, what you say, what you see, what you think, it is in your mind. The strange woman, in all of the aspects of metaphysics, is the feminine part, which is the emotions of the lower mind. And think for a minute, who are the emotions? What are the emotions called? The moon god reflects the emotions. And who is the god of the moon? Sin. You're dwelling in sin when you're dwelling in the emotions. When you're dwelling in the lower mind. In Revelation 17:1, she's called the great whore, the wine of fornication. She is the emotions of the lower mind. And to intercourse with her is to intercourse outside of the marriage of the bridegroom. So this is adultery, and you shall not commit adultery. That does not mean you're not to commune, obviously, with your mind. But it does mean when you're in a question of spirit, when you're in a question of communing with God, it can only be done by the virgin who dwells at the right side. You can have no part in that. Okay? And that's the beautiful part. Because what happens then is after your meditation, here's you. Okay? Here's your mind, and this is where the strange woman lives in the carnal mind. Here's the right side, where the divine virgin lives. Now, when you meditate, you shut this down. When this is shut down, the activity that happens here on the right side, you're totally unaware of. You have no part in this. You're totally unaware of this. But what happens is after it is completed and your meditation is over, then the instruction comes from this side to this side. So then you know what to do. You know how to carry out those things that whatever's coming against you, you know how to react and so forth. Go to page 104 and look at in one of the old laws of Leviticus. Look at Leviticus chapter 19, what it talks about. Leviticus chapter 19. And if you look at verse 29 in Leviticus chapter, do not prostitute your daughter. Okay? Do not prostitute your daughter to cause her to be a whore. Now that's a terrible thing. I mean, you know, God almighty, what is that all about? Your daughter, watch. See, you read these things in the Bible, and you think you're reading, and you're not. Well, you're looking at, you're reading that Bible right now, in most cases you haven't the slightest idea what you're looking at because the words don't mean what they say. What does it mean to prostitute your daughter? To have your daughter go out and be a whore is what it says there? The daughter is the desires of the emotions. So it says, do not prostitute your daughter for that which is your own gain. Instead, your daughter, your desires is to be raised up to that intercourse with the Spirit. You don't prostitute your daughter, your emotional desires, constantly intercoursing with the lower mind for personal gain. People who meditate for gain. And that's prostituting your daughter. Meditation is intercoursing with the bridegroom, dwelling in the lower mind. Dwelling in the higher mind, excuse me. The bridegroom of the earth, now let's one more time get it straight. The bridegroom of the earth is Uranus. But instead of waiting for the bridegroom to return, we've been intercoursing with everyone else, including Saturn and so forth and so on. Now, adultery, as we wrap this up, the emotions which are the physical, running out of control. But now when this white horse Pegasus has appeared, we should consider. And I want to just share something with you as we wrap up this particular part. In Revelation chapter 18, and I'll show you the problem as Pegasus now is starting to exert itself, and we see Pegasus in the universe. And if we go about trying to do this our own way, you know, we go about trying to do the. I'll tell you one of the most destructive things you can do with your life as a spiritual person is read a Bible and not know what you're reading. And most people do. Most people do. You haven't the slightest idea that when you're reading the New Testament, you're reading Greek mythology. Most people don't. Who do you think wrote that stuff? Where do you think it came from? It's Greek mythology. And what is it? It's sun god worship. And the Greeks were the center of sun god worship. That's why your Savior gets crucified, because the sun goes through the cross on December 21st. What's today? Today is November 12th, 13th, whatever. 12th. Okay? In about a month and 9 days, the sun is crucified. That's why Jesus is crucified, because it's Greek mythology. How can you possibly pick up a book of Greek mythology and read it literally? And I see people come in all the time. They open the Bible and read the Bible. Some pretty nasty stuff in there. See? Some pretty nasty stuff in there if you don't know what you're looking at. And believe me, and if you don't understand the mythological part of this, you don't understand it. You don't know. Okay. Here we talk. I'm going to get back to this thing with Pegasus again and tell you why I kind of gave you a warning. I'm not warning you that anything bad is going to happen to you, because nothing bad is going to happen. Nothing bad is going to happen to your children. Nothing bad is going to happen to your earth, except your life is going to be turned upside down. Your country is going to be turned upside down. The world is going to be turned upside down. And you're going to be in the same position as this guy was in Israel. He thought, oh, you know, I thought we were going to defend ourselves. All of a sudden, everybody's talking peace. He couldn't deal with it. Why? Why couldn't he deal with it? You know why? Because his religion told him not to deal with it. You know who the police are finding out is at the core of a lot of this thing that was going on with Rabin getting killed? Radical right-wing rabbis. You know what you have in this church, in this country? Radical right-wing Christian fundamentalists. Pat Robertsons, the Buchanans, and they'll drop an atomic bomb as quick as spit. And that's all they see. And just like it was okay to kill him, somebody will see an abortion doctor, it's okay. Because anything, when you have a religious person, they say, God told me to do this, they can justify anything. But what I'm telling you, what I'm going to show you right now is why I strongly suggest, and that's all I can do because it's none of my business what you do, but I strongly suggest that you take another look, take a look at the headlines in the papers, understand that this thing is happening now right in front of your eyes, and then make it go. Because if you don't do it, it's going to run all over you. And don't tell me that it's not happening, because it's happening. And you know what it is? When you get so many people, since I was a kid, my mother and I used to wander around the streets in Newark, down on Broad Street and Market Street. I was a little kid. And Newark was pretty nice at that time. And every place you went, there was a guy in a corner with the watchtower saying, "The end is coming, the end is coming." And that was weird. It's always been that way. It's always been that way. So when anybody tells you this, to try to say, "Hey, it's kind of funky to tell you, oh, geez, here's another one." I'm not saying that. This is the beginning. This isn't the end. This is the beginning. This is the good stuff happening. Okay? This is the nice things happening. But it's not in the Watchtower, or it's not in some New Age magazine, and it's not some fundamentalist on, it's scientists. It's in the newspaper. The scientists are seeing it. And I'm telling you why. Because if you don't get into your meditation and flow with it, it's going to shake you. It's just going to shake you because you're not going to know where you're coming and going. Plus the fact is, when they arrive, think of somebody that you love. Think of somebody that was part of your life. And this is in a whole different dimension. That person you'll let me say no more about it, but that person you'll recognize. That person will touch you. That person will shake your hand. That's how dynamic this is. Don't you want to be part of it? And I'm not talking about waiting 20 or 30 years. When this first came out about Pegasus, which a couple of months ago, in 2 months now, all of a sudden they see the light beings are streaking like bees forming to a hive. What's going on? Okay? All right. Now, here's page 1012, Revelation chapter 18. And let me show you why I'm concerned about you and me and all of us. And as I said, I just leave it to you to chart your own course, and that's fine. Revelation chapter 18. Now, this after the part we talked about the white horse, which is Pegasus. And after these things, it says, I saw another angel come down from heaven having great power. That angel, okay, would you read it? Would you read that with me again? Let's stop for a minute because it's so important. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. Okay? All right. Let me read this from the Associated Press, Washington, Hubble telescope. Thousands of stars rushing towards the core of a globular cluster, like bees swarming to their hive. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. A dense star cluster like a mini galaxy, under the influence of one giant central object. Okay? Okay. So light beings bringing understanding, bringing enlightenment. Friends, I can't wait. I don't know about you. I can't wait. If the ship sets down in my backyard with blinking lights, I'll be the first one out there with ice cream and Snickers bars or whatever they want. I mean, this is just the greatest thing in the world. God's understanding and enlightenment to restore the poor, to restore the oppressed people, to restore the people who have been hurt by the systems, to restore the frightened and hurt, to restore the children, to restore the animals, to take away the brutality, to restore nature back. Yeah. For 1,000 years, this is going to go. For 1,000 years. And what's going to happen after 1,000 years? Saturn will be back. And the competitiveness will start again. But anyhow, 1,000 years I can deal with that. No, don't worry about that. We've got a long weekend. Okay, 18:2. And he cried almightily with a strong voice, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils. Blind! This is what the light is saying right now as they dismount from Pegasus. They're getting off their horses. Do you remember the John Wayne movies? All right, Pilgrim. And he got down off of his horse, and, he looked around, they're all going on, what happened here? John Wayne said the Indians burned the village down. It looks pretty nasty, Pilgrim. And that's what's saying here. Look at this mess. We're coming back. The whole thing has fallen. It's become a habitation of devils. What is that? What's become a habitation of devils? Your mind. What are devils? Thoughts. That's all I said. That's all. That's enough. What was it that caused this group of people to kill this man? What was this man, Rabin, what was he guilty of? Peace. He didn't want children to get killed anymore. He didn't want the earth to get hurt anymore. He wanted to extend his hand out to everybody in brotherhood. You know what? To religious people, that's evil. And I'll tell you, right in this country, there's people who, on television, the one thing they don't want to see is peace. You know why? Because it screws up everything they wrote in their books about the horrible wars that God's going to unleash. Because they're lying about that. Because God doesn't make war. God doesn't make war on anybody. In 18:3, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. With a strange woman, everything. How could you in a place, is a Jewish, Christian ethic, Muslim, how could you, did you watch them? You have men in black suits and ties in Congress, and they're going to vote on this bill. And it's going to give $7 billion more to the military. And it's going to increase the space program. It's only going to hurt who? Elderly, sick, underprivileged, homeless, children. All of those people who have been beat up, who cannot defend themselves, are going to be beat up by the men in the black suits. And after the vote comes, they all stand up. We balance the budget. You balance the budget on the backs of the hurt and the oppressed. And so what does it say? They have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. You know, in the world, do you know over the last 10, 15, 20 years in this world, you know where all the raises and the money's gone? To the top third. The average working person, their average income raise has gone up by 2%. Don't see it. Working people don't see it. The people that should be receiving the benefits don't see it. So they become rich off the sweat of the average person. They don't share it. Don't want this one to get on our television network where I might work, but that's the way it is. And I heard another voice from heaven, verse 4, saying, "Come out of her, my people." Do you see it? Look at it with your eyes. Come out of who? Her. Your emotional nature. Stop. Come out of her, that you may not be partakers of her sins. Who's her? It's your emotional nature that you commune with every day. Come out of her, that you may not be, and that you receive not of her plagues. That your children, for God's sakes, they got more drug outlets in this country than they have AMPs. Come out from her. What else can it say? And those are your instructions. And 18:5 says, her sins have reached unto heaven. What does that mean? That means that the emotions which have ripped you apart have reached right up to the point of your higher mind, that you don't even function up there. You can't even make it up there anymore. Because you're so consumed in survival. Your answers are going to come from your neighbors. Your answers are going to come from this place or that place. They're not. Your answers are going to come from Pegasus. Your answers are going to come from the cosmos. Your answers are going to come from the universe. Through this point where God has told us the sign would come, you have to focus. You should be tuned in. You should be opened. That's where your answers are going to come from. And look what it says, verse 6, reward her as she has rewarded you, double unto her according to her works in the cup which she has filled. Fill her to double. And that's talking about the duality of all things. There's a duality of all of our natures, the positive and the negative and so forth and so on. And there's always that duality that's talked about in these verses. And look at the emotions in verse 7. How much she has glorified herself and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow give her. For she said in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow and shall see no sorrow. Oh, we're so damn cocky about what, we got this, what we're going to do. Until we find out when we get there, there's nothing there. And we're so sure that we've got the right idea in our head. But remember, when you have been getting your instructions from your emotions, you're not sure. You're being deceived. And the only place that you can get instruction for your life is from that who is the virgin as she intercourses with the Christ in the right side and produces the child. Otherwise, you can't. Look what it says. Look what it said. How much torment and sorrow. For she says, I sit a queen. The ego sits a queen. I'm untouchable. Nothing can ever happen. In verse 8, therefore shall her plagues come in one day. Do you see what it said? In one day. Death and mourning and famine. And she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judged her. What's it talking about? It's talking about that you burn away the affliction of the mind and the emotions with that which is spirit. With that which is the energy. Where's the fire in you? Is in the solar plexus. Let the sun rise within you, and the fire shall consume the lamb, and the fire shall rage within you. And it is a cleansing fire. But what is it? It's not a destructive fire. It burns like they burn dross off the fine gold. That's what it burns. This is the adulteress. And then in verse 10 it says, well, in verse 9, the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament of her when they see the smoke of her burning. That's what's going on right now. They can't deal with what they're saying. What is this? What is this peace stuff? Beware, beware, beware. They can't deal with it. Kill people that strive for peace because they can't deal with it. In 1810, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, alas, alas, the great city Babylon, that mighty city that's talking about the carnal mind, for in 1 hour is your judgment come. How soon will it come? For God's sakes, I'm telling you, they see it. You can look at it with binoculars. It's in the newspaper. You can see it now. It isn't someplace in the far off sweet by and all this crap. You can see it with a pair of binoculars. How close is it if you can see it? And I'm not trying to scare you at all, because when I'm telling you this is the wonderful time of the universe, this is the time for the children, this is the time for the dolphins. The dolphins won't have to beach themselves and commit suicide anymore over the destruction that we've rained upon the earth. They'll be able to swim and jump for joy. And you and the children, and to be restored under the way that life is supposed to be, in the end of all these damnable religions, so you can reach out your hand to people in every part of the earth in one. And then in 12 to 22, it talks about the loss of traditional ways. And then in verse 22, and the voice of the harpers, and this is what I want to take you. Okay. This is what's going to happen. This is what you're reading about in the newspaper when you see about Pegasus. Look at verse 21. And a mighty angel, it's another light being, took up a stone, and that's the pineal stone, like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea. And that's the place of the emotions and spirits, saying, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. You won't be able to figure this out unless you're harmonizing in meditation. You won't have a slight idea of what's going on, and that's what the people of this... Friends, if I have told you this, if I have ever told you anything, and all the years that we've been here, if I have ever told you anything that didn't happen, if I've ever told you anything out of emotions or to try to scare anybody, then fine, get up and walk out. But if I haven't done that, if I tried to document everything, if I tried to put everything through science, if I tried to show you everything through paper, I've told you this stuff, and I'm just trying to let you know how serious and how beautiful and how wonderful it is. I'm not trying to say to run and hide under a shelter. I'm saying come out into the sun, come out under the stars, and look up. Look up for the white horse, because these are friends. This is love coming. This is peace coming. This is healing coming. This is restoration coming. But for those who want to go ahead in the day-to-day combative, competitive attitudes of the left side to try to work themselves out and to do these things on the left side, it's going to be a shattering effect. It's going to have a terrible time. They're going to have a terrible time with this. But that's not going to make any difference. You and I can't do it. Churches can't do it. Religion is going to. But this is going to happen through the cosmos. Many are going to be unhappy. Look what it says in verse 20. And the voice of the harpers, verse 22, and musicians and the pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in you. And no craftsman of whatsoever craft shall be found any more in you. And the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in you. This is what you've got to say. I've got to harmonize. I can't allow this to happen. I can't be outside of this beautiful light that's coming down. I got to stay deep within this. And look at verse 23. Not knowing what's happening, the Spirit will be the last thing of concern. And look what it says, and the light of a candle shall shine no more in you. And listen to this. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more in you. For your merchants were the great men of the earth. And listen to this, my friends, and think of all of us. And by their sorceries were all nations deceived. Please, I'm telling you, please don't allow the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride to be stilled in you. Harmonize, flow with it. And I'm sorry, but I know I'm running late, but please, this is, this. I don't get this chance. I just got a couple more minutes, but this is what I want to show you, okay? Just stay with me, because what I'm telling you is true. And I don't want you to come to me for documentation. You'll see it on television, you'll watch it in the newspapers, but get the newspaper. Read your papers, and you'll see it. Look for Pegasus, look for these signs that are coming, and strange things that are about to happen, and you'll see it. Okay? Now, what to do? To understand the divine mind is what you need to do. Okay, just go real quick with me, and then we'll all pull out of here. Page 1014. Revelation 21, verse 2, okay? And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Okay? That's your divine mind. That's the divine spirit. That's the bride. Now, what's the New Jerusalem? Okay, page 953. Real quick, because we have to go. Page 953. Galatians chapter 4. And the Apostle Paul defines the New Jerusalem. Jerusalem, which is above, that's your divine mind. That's what I'm talking about. That's the bride, is free, which is the mother of us all. That's the New Jerusalem. That's what's coming down. And that's what will come down into your heart in meditation. Okay? And I want to tell you just about the chakras, the 7 chakras, and all of that business. Go to 1015, Revelation chapter 21, and verse 9. Verse 9, and there came unto me one of the 7 angels, that's the 7 chakras, which had the 7 vials full of the 7 last plagues, and talked with me, saying, come here, and I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. Who is the Lamb? The Lamb is Aries. In you, where is the Lamb? Aries. It's the pineal gland, the pineal gland of the brain. The activity of the intercourse happens right there. The Lamb's wife is identified in you as the pineal gland of the brain. Okay, that's where it is. That's where it touches. Now, here we are. You ready? You want to say I'm crazy? That's the whole world can say that, and that's fine. But I'm telling you. When I'm telling you what I know, and what I'm telling you, I'm instructed to tell you, and I've got to stay here, so if I'm wrong, then you can run me out of here, okay? But it's too important, and I know I'm not. And thank God, as the scientists and everybody are confirming this. Let me just show you. This is the finale. Page 802, Matthew chapter 25. All right? Matthew chapter 25. Please go there, just for a minute, and then we're done. Matthew chapter 25, page 802. Then shall the kingdom of heaven. Remember Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you? Okay? Then shall the kingdom of heaven be like 10 virgins. Okay? There are not 10 virgins, but anyhow, which took their lands. Look at verse 2. 5 of them were foolish, 5 of them were wise. Okay? This is Greek mythology, folks. There were not 10 virgins running around who were stupid. 5 are stupid and 5 are smart. What this is talking about is you have the 5 senses: sight, taste, touch, smell, hearing. You can either use them wisely, or you can take sight, taste, touch, smell, hearing, and use them foolishly. Okay? The one who doesn't use the 5 senses in meditation with the bride are foolish. The one who uses the 5 senses wisely are wise. Now, they have, well, watch this. Verse 9, okay? The foolish said to the wise, give us, verse 8, give us your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, said, no, go and you buy for yourselves. In other words, when you meditate, listen, and the orgasm I talked to you about in the intercourse with the bride and bridegroom takes place, that fluid, which would be something like the seminal fluid that flows in orgasm, flows up from the spine, up the spinal column, this is scientific fact, and touches the pineal gland of the brain. Okay? Now, you've got to make sure that there's oil in your lamp. The lamp is the pineal gland of the brain. You get the oil into the lamp by meditating, activating the kundalini up the spine, which is the oil which comes with the discharge of that type of orgasm, rises up the spine, fills the lamp. If you're meditating, there'll be oil in your lamp. If you're not, your lamp will be empty. And what happens? The bridegroom comes, and you don't have oil in your lamp, and you're not going to see him. Believe me, you're not going to see it. But if there is oil in your lamp for your meditation, you'll see it. Look at verse 10. While they went to buy, they didn't have any oil in their lamp, the bridegroom came. They that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Who's coming? The bridegroom? What is he coming on? A white horse? It's up to you. And it's up to me. From here on in, what else can I say? And it could be tomorrow. It could be tomorrow. And it's not like it's old Bible prophecy. It's in the newspaper. You can see it with binoculars. The white horse is on his hind legs. The mane is flowing. The whinnying is heard all through the universe. Behold, heavens open, and I saw a white horse. And he that sat upon him was righteous and true. And he is dismounting the white horse. The bridegroom is ready to claim the bride. Uranus is ready to claim Gaia. But do you have oil in your lamp? Thank you.